Welcome back to the class on international business communication. Today we will talk about organizational communication. I know I'm giving you a lot of these supposedly boring theories, but we will revise a little bit. I'll tell you the implications of discussing these theories in light of your work in the international business environment. These theories haven't come out of thin air. They have come out of years and centuries of observations of what happens in real environments and an attempt by researchers and educators and people who are really concerned about the success of these organizations, trying to make sense of what is going on in these organizations. So let's get back into it. Okay, the first thing I'd like you to do is, of course, revise. Please discuss the following and their implications for a culturally homogeneous and heterogeneously constituted professional environment. We talked about the social exchange theory, pragmatism, the FIRO theory, relational interaction theory, interpersonal perception theory, rules theory, dialogic theory, dramaturgical theory, etc., etc. So we discussed all these things, and what I would really like you to do is discuss these in the light of what you do in the real business environment, especially if considering these two different scenarios. One is, consider that you are in your hometown or in your home state. You are working with people who've probably gone to the same school as you did, speak the same language, have the same kind of cultural background, are approximately in the, of course ages would be different, but they understand what you say without you having to say much. So that is more of a culturally homogeneous kind of environment. I would also like you to discuss these theories in light of a heterogeneously constituted professional environment, which is a place where people come from different backgrounds, different states. In the case of India, you go abroad, different countries, but India is as culturally diverse as any place gets. So if you're working in a metro, people, you could have about 19-20 states represented in one office, and that is really where all these things start coming into play. What are people's intentions? Why do they form relationships? What is the difference between the manner in which people from rural backgrounds form relationships or communicate with their peers, subordinates and superiors versus the manner in which people from metropolitan cities form these relationships? And I know some of the people may say that we shouldn't be talking about these differences because we are all the same. Unfortunately or fortunately, we are not. Whether we like to admit it or not, we are not the same. We have different ways in which we do things. We have different internal dispositions. We have different experiences that have shaped our preferences for certain kinds of behaviors and certain kinds of certain personalities that we find comfortable to work with. Everybody is right from their own point of view, but we behave differently, and these differences in behavior can impact the manner in which we form our professional relationships, which in turn have a bearing on the productivity of the organization, the organizational climate in any organization, which is something we will come to in one of the following sessions. But so I really want you to observe these differences, and I would like you to also see whether these relational, which of these theories are more applicable in which situation. Now, a small disclaimer here. I have breezed through most of the theories. I have told you very, very brief overviews of these theories. We can have an entire course, we can have a series of courses only on the theoretical underpinnings of organizational and relational communication. That is not the purpose of this course. All I want to do through these discussions is to give you keywords. I don't want to give you patchwork. I want to give you keywords that I hope you will take and explore further. That is the main purpose of these series of lectures. I wish I could give you access to the whole library we have here. I wish I could give you access, I could help you get access to the resources I have, to everything I've learned, but unfortunately that is not the case. So I can give you these keywords, and I suggest that you look for these things in your libraries and also tie in or try to tie in these things with what you see in the environment. Again, I'm sorry if the discussions or if the explanations have not been enough. I wish I had more time. Maybe in future we might even develop such a course. I'll see if that is possible again. So let's get back to this. Once you have discussed these things, then let's move into organizational communication. Okay, what is organizational communication? Again, another disclaimer, whatever I put on the slides has been taken from a variety of sources, and I have been referring wherever possible to the sources that I have taken these things from. Most of the times even the same words have been reproduced, and that is what I am acknowledging the contribution of the original authors. So if you really want to go through this book that I have referred to for these theories, this is the book I have been using. Questions of Communication, A Practical Introduction to Theory. This is the 3rd edition. If you can find a later edition, great. Please refer to it. It's a very, very good overview on the theories of the communication, theories of the types of communication we find in organizations and elsewhere. Anyway, okay. Organizations and communication. An organization comes into being when there are persons that are able to communicate with each other. That is the first condition for any organization to come into being, for any organization to exist. There should be people who are able and willing to talk to each other. They are willing to exchange messages, they are willing to exchange ideas and information. Secondly, the goal of any organization is to be productive. Usually, a for-profit organization wants to make money at the end of the day. Whatever they do, corporate social responsibility, contribution to society are all good. But the ultimate goal of a profit-making organization is to make money so that everybody starts leading more comfortable lifestyles. For a non-profit organization, there are various motivations. You want to help the needy, you want to help people who are not so advantaged, who do not have so many resources. So we have different goals. But the ultimate goal of any organization is action that results in the fulfillment of any goal. So we need an organization comes into being when people are willing to talk to each other. Secondly, when people are willing to do something about what they want, when they are willing to work with each other and reach that common goal of the organization and to accomplish a common purpose. They should be willing to work, and they should be willing to accomplish a common purpose. They should have that end in sight, and they should be willing to work towards it. So an organization rests on people. We make up any organization. We are the constituent parts of any organization. An organization cannot function without people. Okay, an organization usually organizational communication usually involves studying companies, agencies, governments, administrations or other similar ongoing institutions that consist of more than a few people. An organization, you'll say, okay, what about these small non-profit organizations that consist of 2 or 3 people? That is a special case. Most organizations consist of more than a few people. And organizational communication usually involves studying these organizations. It involves studying the interactions between the constituent parts of these organizations within the organization and outside of this organization. And that is how these two are linked. No organization can exist without people, and where there are people, there is bound to be interaction. That is what we talked about yesterday. Okay, so we communicate, we set up, we work towards common goals by interacting with each other, by sharing an idea, by sharing a common vision, by sharing the work we do, by distributing the work amongst ourselves. Let us get into what the theoretical, some principles exhibited by formal organizations. Now, formal organizations have a continuity principle. They are embedded in history and presumably anticipate a future. formal organizations that can be categorized as organizations are embedded in history. They have a reason for their existence, a historical reason. Something didn't go right, that is why people got together, and or something was going on and people got together and they started doing something new in addition to add to something that is already existing, and they anticipate a future. This is not just about getting together, it is about achieving goal after goal after goal and reaching an ultimate end. Task specialization principle, they depend upon certain task specializations. All organizations are dependent on the specialization or categorizations of different tasks, and people who are experts in those tasks and are also experts in tying in those tasks with the people around them. Control principle, they create internal control systems in the form of bureaucracies, chains of command, hierarchies, leadership and reward structures. Now, what happens is that in any organization there has to be some way of controlling. It is not like an amoeba that just moves around in any direction. An organization has a specific vision and mission, and there are people who are moving towards this common goal. So when we talk about the control principle, they create internal control systems, they create internal regulatory mechanisms in the form of bureaucracies. There are people who direct you, who supervise you, who you are responsible for, who channelize the communication, and that is where the chain of command comes in, and leadership and reward structures, which means that in this in any organization you have a channel of communication, you have set patterns for how the communication is supposed to proceed. Somebody is responsible to somebody is trying to coordinate the activities of someone else, and somebody is actually keeping the goal in view and helping everybody move towards that goal, and that is the leader. And the reward structures are there to regulate the work of any organization, which means that organizations have positive reinforcement. They offer positive reinforcement as a means of pulling people closer to the goal, and that is what reward structures are. So this is the control principle. The last principle here is the multiple audience principle. Organizations address multiple audiences internally and externally. Now what does this mean? Organizations address different kinds of people, different categories of people, different groups of people who are involved in different activities within the organization and outside the organization. So this is the multiple audience principle. They are not directed towards one person, they are directed towards a group of people outside and a group of people inside. Okay. Next, organizational communication, especially in formal organizations, presumes one, available communication channels. Again, communication comes in, and you'll say, why am I teaching you all these difficult theories? This is the reason. No class on communication can be, no class on organizations and management can be complete without the theoretical underpinnings of communication, and no class on communication can be complete without, especially business communication, can be complete without discussing the theoretical underpinnings of what organizations are made of and what management means. So all this is interconnected. Available communication channels. We assume that there's more than one communication channel that is available. It could be face-to-face communication, it could be emails, it could be some form of mass communication. Voluntary and active participation. People are in the organization because they are working towards a common goal. Okay, and when we talk about voluntary participation, there is something that is motivating them to move towards that common goal. Active participation means that they are focusing on the common goal and they are actually moving towards it. They want to do it and they are showing some progress on a daily basis or on a regular basis. They have a common purpose or identity. We are assuming these things. You're part of an organization, you have a common purpose. We all want to make money by doing X, Y, Z. continuity. They are constantly moving, they are constantly there is continuity between the tasks. All the tasks are tied in with each other. There's something that is preceding. You don't do tasks randomly, they're all connected with each other. There is task specialization. Even though tasks are connected to each other, they are specialized. There are experts that do them, and ultimately there are people who help tie in the work that these experts, that these specialists have done with the ultimate goal of the organization. There are internal control systems, as we just discussed, and they have relationships with multiple audiences. Okay. Theoretical underpinnings. Now here comes the tough part, and I promise you this won't last very long. This lecture and probably the next lecture, and we should be done with most of the theory that I want to discuss in this series of lectures. The first theory here is the classical management theory. This is based on the work of F.W. Taylor and Henry Fayol. Taylor was based in the United States, Fayol was based in France, if I am correct, and they did their work independently, but then later researchers just brought the work of these two people together and came up with what are known as classical management theories. According to these theories, organizations are producers. The ultimate goal of any organization is to produce something that will sell, and sell for money, or sell for emotions, or sell for contributions, or sell for voluntary activity. Organizations are based on the belief that too many decisions were made by leaders who did not have a clue about what their changes would produce. So they feel, both these authors or both these researchers feel, that many decisions are taken by people, the people who are leading or who are at the helm of affairs rarely know what is really going on at the front line. According to this theory, if the managers had enough detailed information about how workers accomplish their jobs, both in actual and potential production, they could better compare the likely results of proposed changes without having to expend actual resources on experimentation, which means that if people knew, if these people at the helm of affairs knew what was going on, if they knew about the nitty-gritties of whatever was happening, they would be able to reach their goals much faster with a more optimal use of resources. Okay. The first of these theories that we'll discuss here is the scientific management theory that was developed by Taylor 1913 and 1947 and discussed in this book by Ross and Anderson. According to this theory, the organization is a machine. And I'm sorry, there's just too much on the slide, but please bear with me. I thought it would be better if you read all this and have me explain in the background. So you're not seeing my face, you're seeing the slide. Organization is a machine. Organizations or factories are big mechanisms that fit together smaller and basically interchangeable mechanisms known as workers. And you'll say, this is what is happening in the industry these days. This is what is happening in the business process outsourcing industry these days. They want to produce results and they refer to people who are working there as human resources. And the terminology, I have never worked in such an organization, but I've heard that the terms that are used are please send 2 resources here and 3 resources there depending on their skill set. So the more number of skills or the larger your skill set, the more interchangeable you are and the more the better fit you are in the organization, because they can just send you from one place to another. You are assumed to know X, Y and Z, and they could shift you from X to Y to Z depending on the need. So it is all about productivity. What can the organization produce that we can sell? And if you have that skill that can help the organization produce that, then you're moved from point A to point B. So you are more about, it's more about having this all-in-one screwdriver or all-in-one torch. You know, you have a torch that also has an alarm clock in it, that also has maybe you know, different things. We have all these all-in-one kind of devices, and you are considered to be one such device. Okay. Organization as machines, so organizations are factories. The second thing that the scientific management theory assumes is that instead of demanding higher output or productivity of labor, this is the theory proposed by Taylor, and to back those demands with pressures or threats by matching men, tools and tasks they were required to perform, it was possible to increase productivity without placing increased physical burdens upon the men. Okay, now this is my interpretation, I could be wrong, but we talked about Martin Buber's theory yesterday, and I feel that the I-it portion of what Buber had discussed fits in with this demand for higher output or productivity of labor. I don't care who you are, I don't care what your internal feelings are, I don't care what is going on. You are a machine, I'm ordering you to move from one point to another, I'm ordering you to function in a certain manner. So this is probably comparable to the I-it paradigm proposed by Martin Buber. And when we say that instead of doing this, it was possible to increase the productivity without placing increased physical burdens upon the men. It's not about the number of hours you put in, it's not about the number of books you can place on a cart and shelf in the library, it is not about the number of trips you can make from point 1 to point 2, it is not about the number of trips a taxi driver can make during the day. It is about it is still possible to increase the productivity by judiciously managing the resources we have. So this is probably I-thou. Again, I am not the expert on theories of communication. If Dr. Wood is listening to this, he is the expert and I welcome his inputs and I will revise this based on what they say. Anyway, this is my insight. The limitation to this theory is it doesn't take into account the rich uniqueness of the individual human person. We are still treating the machine. So instead of placing too much burden on individual resources, what we are doing is, according to this theory, we say, okay, let's observe the different processes. Instead of placing burden individually on these resources, what we do is we look for places that can take more burden, that can be more productive, and we judiciously spread out the work amongst different resources. We, if things can be done simultaneously, we do them simultaneously, but still the organization is a machine and the ultimate goal has to be productivity. It is a factory. The big limitation is that individual uniqueness of the human person is not taken into account. I may not be able to do something on one day, but depending on what I get trained for, depending on my internal disposition, depending on my intrapersonal and interpersonal, specifically interpersonal communication with others in my environment, I may be able to be more productive on a different day. And this theory does not take these things into account. So that is the big limitation. Of course, there are other critiques also. The administrative theory is the second type of these classical management theories that we are discussing. We won't really discuss many theories today, but I just want you to get an overview. Now, according to Henry Fayol, who did his work in France, discussed in this book by Ross and Anderson, the application, it involves the application of scientific thinking to the work done by those who administer managerial practices. So we don't treat the organization as a machine. What we are essentially focusing on is how these functions are administered, how these functions are managed by the people who are trying to make the organization more productive. It's more based on the process. Fayol came up with a 5-part analysis of administrative science principles. According to him, he says that managers are expected to plan, which is anticipate a probable future and work towards it. You have an ultimate goal, you have an end goal, there's something out there. So you move from point A to point B through a series of steps that are going through a deadline, and that is what planning means. Organizing is creating clearly understood divisions of labor in hierarchical, or in Fayol's terms, scalar form. And these things, of course, Eisenberg and Goodall studied this and suggested these divisions which are published in this book by Ross and Anderson. So and these are Eisenberg and Goodall's interpretations that I'm sharing with you. I'm recreating knowledge, not I'm reproducing knowledge. I'm not innovatively coming up with new ideas. I told you where I had a new idea. Anyway, so organizing is creating clearly understood divisions of labor in hierarchical or scalar forms, which means that in any organization we have different people doing different things. Now, in order to control people at different stages, we organize things, we create hierarchical structures, we create specialized teams, we have somebody monitoring these specialized teams. So that is what organizing means. You have this mess of what people are doing, what they're trying to achieve, how the organization is functioning, and you categorize it, you slot it into these different sections. Okay, the next one is commanding, setting goals realistically. And this is the hardest part of any administrator. How do you know what is achievable and what is not? It comes with experience. It may come down from discussions with people who've been doing this for a while. But commanding essentially involves setting the realistic and feasible setting of goals. What is realistic? What can be done? What cannot be done by this organization? You can't expect workers. You may be able to expect your workers to work for 12 hours, maybe for 2 weekends in a row. You may be able to expect your workers to come to the office on Saturdays and Sundays for 2 weeks in a row. Third weekend, they'll say, we can't do it. We need to recharge our batteries. We need to spend time with our children. So there has to be some realistic goal setting. You cannot have an organization that works 7 days a week. You cannot have an organization that doesn't give more than 10 days off to its employees in a whole year. You have to space these things. You have to you cannot have 50 people looking after IT all the time. If they are efficient, it depends. Again, I'm just giving you an example. Maybe you need 50 people looking after IT, but then their work is segregated. So this is commanding. How much you need to do, by when you need to finish it, and what comes next. And there has to be some flexibility. And this is what Fayol says, that you have to be able to do these things, and they will ultimately determine the success of the organization. The next one is coordinating. Coordinating is relating diverse employees to each other's interests and to those of the organization, which means that you need to know what every employee is capable of doing, what their contribution is, and then you take these people with specialized tasks and you connect them to each other. So that is coordinating. You have different people specializing in different areas. As a manager, it's a manager's responsibility to connect these specialized parts into a whole. Okay, controlling is the evaluation of work styles and subsequent rewards. This is where the manager's work comes in again, and an administrator's work comes in. So you plan, you organize, you command, you coordinate, and then you control what is going on by way of evaluation and positive or negative reinforcement. Organizations, the third set of theories here is organizations as collections of individual needs. We have a human relations or human resources theory, according to which organizations were capable of creating internal communication patterns that supported their business goals much more effectively. Organizations increased their rationality and self-awareness, which produced better quality information. Again, they are dependent more on human relations, human resources. The discussion of these theories, unfortunately, is outside the purview of this course. I'm sure you will be discussing these theories in your course on organizational behavior or human behavior and management, which I believe has been taught by Dr. Sushmita Mukhopadhyay. I'm not sure if she's taught this course. That is what she does. I mean, that is one of the courses she teaches here at IIT, so I'm not sure if she has a web course or a video course. But this is discussed extensively in that course, so I will not touch it. I'll just tell you where you can find the information. Some examples of human resources theories are Hawthorne studies and theory Y. Now let's come to the actual links between organizations and communication. And you'll say, what were you doing for the past 40 minutes? I was trying to give you a background for the next set of theories for whatever we are going to discuss. The basic concepts in these theories that are based on systems, on considering organizations as systems and not as machines, are, first one is, organization is like an organism, not like a machine. It's not only meant to produce, it is it evolves like a biological organization. It is born, it grows, it moves, it achieves. You can have some tentative plan for its evolution, but it eventually takes on its own shape and it grows. It's like a human being. We know, medical science rests on what human beings, on the similarities between human beings, but it's the biggest challenge of medical science is the individual responses to treatment, the individual sensitivities to different things in the physical environment, and that is something that the doctors do. They become experts at after years and years and years of practice and years and years and years of reading reports, of reading papers, of reading other people's accounts of how they've tackled similar things. So medical science is one such field of study that rests on this whole uncertainty of the evolution of any organism. And here we can compare the any organization to the human body. It is it produces, it feels, it communicates, but it also takes on its own shape. Two genetically similar people, two twins, don't ultimately grow up to be the exact same people. They don't grow up to be clones of each other. They take on their own personalities, they chart their own paths, and they move. Similarly, organizations also evolve. It is an open system. Okay. Excuse me. The first set of theories that we will discuss in this is the structural functional tradition. According to the structural functional tradition, communication doesn't move like an object from person to person or from source to receiver, but is a function of complex changes in a web of excuse me. Sorry about that. Okay. According to the structural functional tradition, communication doesn't move like an object from person to person or from source to receiver, but it is a function of complex changes in a web of relationships. What we saw yesterday was this: me, you, or okay, so communication is not only this or this or this or this. Communication is what happens here. I exchange millions and millions and millions of messages with you, and you exchange billions and millions of messages with me and with everyone else, and they start affecting each other, and communication is something that happens right here. Okay, so it is impacted by the different messages. You have different types of messages going on. You have I'm using different colors to just sort of demonstrate what is going on here. Okay, so all these complex relationships we have with each other and with everyone else in the environment somehow impact the manner in which we communicate with each other, and communication is essentially dependent on the shape each of these different relationships take and the impact each of these relationships has on you and me and everyone else in the environment. Some examples of these structural functional theories are bureaucratic theory, homeostatic theory, and the structuration theory, and we'll discuss each of these today. Bureaucratic theory, bureaucracy according to Max Weber 1946, as discussed in Ross and Anderson 2000, is the rational structuring of organizational roles for maximum efficiency. Okay, so bureaucracy has come to acquire a very negative meaning. Bureaucracy has come to be treated or perceived as something we all need to deal with, as more of a hindrance in the actual movement of things. But it essentially, when the word bureaucracy came up and when bureaucracy came to be studied as a philosophical construct, it really referred to the rational structuring of organizational roles for maximum efficiency. We divide the roles in order to achieve an optimum input based on some rational logic. We structure the organization based on some rational logic. Okay, now the bureaucratic theory was discussed by Baugmann in 1989, Blau in 1956, Eisenberg and Goodall in 1997, and these are some of the theorists who discussed bureaucratic theory. These are discussed in the book by Ross and Anderson. Now, assumptions according to this theory about how organizations should be structured are, the first assumption here is division of labor. Any organization should divide labor according to the people, according to the specializations, according to the individual specific contributions that people involved in the organization can bring to the table. So you create functional roles. You have different people looking after the server of in a place like this that is coming up with all these videos. You have a different set of people who are doing the editing. You have a different set of people who are manning the control room, who are deciding where and how to move the camera. You have different set of people who are coordinating with the faculty who are recording these lectures. So people who are editing may not necessarily be comfortable constantly coordinating with the people who are involved in this process. You have different set of people who are heading the organization. You have different set of people who are maintaining records. They aren't interchangeable. You divide the labor, you create functional roles, you train them to perform those functions really well. The second thing here is clear, explicit definitions of job responsibilities. The more explicit you are about what people are doing, the more explicit you are about what you as an organization expect of the employees, the easier it will be for the organization to succeed. Blurred expectations, unclear expectations always form a barrier. Why does that happen? When the expectations are blurred, when the expectations are not clear, it creates a lot more intrapersonal communication. Am I doing this right? Am I really supposed to do this? Is this really my work? What if I don't know how to do this? Who do I go to? Who else can help me? That is what happens when the expectations are not clear. Am I getting paid enough for the work I'm contributing? How can I be doing A and B and C and D and E? I'm only getting paid to do three things. So I'll either do A, B and C, or I'll do A, D and E, or I'll do A, C and D, but I will not do anything more because I'm not getting paid for it. And that is what happens when the expectations are not met. The expectations need to be very clear about what you expect of your employees. Okay, and that is how any organization should be structured. Pardon me for the bad throat. Standardization procedures well understood by all. The procedures that are laid down should be standardized, they should be benchmarked, they should be clearly laid out, and attempts should be made to make them understood by everybody who is involved. Hierarchical structures of authority, you have a sense of responsibility to the superiors and coordination of subordinates. So we decide, we have a very clear demarcation of who is higher up and who is lower in the chain of hierarchy? Who am I responsible to? Who do I report to? Who decides what I do? Who defines my responsibilities? And at the same time, this person sort of this person coordinates the work of the juniors, consolidates whatever the subordinates have done, and takes it and then takes the information to a higher level. So you have hierarchical structures of authority. Even in a flat organization, we will have some levels of hierarchy to take the organization in a different direction. And I will give you a pictorial representation of what I think. Again, I could be wrong, but this is my insight. In any organization, no organization can function if the constituent parts are scattered like this. Okay, we don't know. So if here is the goal, you don't know, you could be moving in this direction one day, you could start moving in this direction the other day, you could start moving in this direction the other day. This is what happens if there is no hierarchy. What a hierarchy does is you have people here. Okay, so you have people here with specialized tasks. There are people above them. So this person is responsible for these two people, this person is responsible for these two people, and this person is responsible for these two people. And you have this person is responsible for monitoring these two people and the interaction between them, and this person is responsible for monitoring these two people and the work that they do collectively. And the person right at the top takes the advice from these two people and goes towards a goal. Sorry about that. Okay, so what really happens is, if you see this diagram, looks like an arrow. An arrow that takes all the mess here, all the chaos here. You know, you have the work done by this, you have the work done by this, you have the work done by this person, you have the work done by this person, and all this work is organized by placing people in a hierarchy. You have these people, you have these people, you have these people, and ultimately you're really moving towards a goal, which is what any organization needs to do. Okay. That's why hierarchy is important even in a flat organization. Technical competence as a criterion for selection of and rewards to personnel. We need to be technically competent, we need to be experts in whatever we are doing. And these are again assumptions, but then I think they're very valid in our day-to-day lives. Technical competence is should be or is used as a criterion for the selection of personnel and rewards to personnel rather than their personal traits, which is something I hope you'll all agree with. Your teachers, you'll say my teacher marks me on what on how I behave with her in class. That may not be true. Well, most of the times it's not true. So I can speak for the community myself. I think that is not true even in organizations. The technical competence, what you contribute, how much of an expert you are considered in what you do and how you contribute to the overall productivity of the organization, is usually taken a basis for the positive reinforcement you get, and that is what we assume about the bureaucratic theory. Management and other roles presumed to be ongoing responsibilities, creating careers, barring ineffectiveness and no capricious termination. Again, these are ongoing responsibilities. They create careers, they prevent ineffectiveness. Of course, there is no random termination, but then we do our best to prevent ineffectiveness as far as possible, and that is what really happens in a bureaucratic, in an effective organization. That is what the bureaucratic theory proposes. There are critiques for this theory, and those critiques and other opinions about this theory are outside the purview of this course. This is what the theory proposes. The second theory here is the homeostatic theory, which says that every organization or system tends to maintain homeostasis or an internal balance, which means that wherever we are, whatever we do, we come back to normal. There is an imbalance that is created in our environments by virtue of the things that we cannot control, and the ultimate goal of any organization is to come back to normal, whatever the case may be. Homeostatic theory is a way of defining organizations both as systems of structural roles and as human systems with symbolic needs that must be fulfilled for members, which means that according to this theory, we define organizations that produce. We also define organizations as human systems. It's not only about production, it is also about the human aspect of production, individual needs, individual sets of expertise, and humans individually and the organizations as a whole have symbolic needs that may not always be. We were talking about this a little bit yesterday in the convergence theories. I will discuss the convergence theories again when we talk about group and team communication. So please don't think that I've sort of left you in the lurch. So we will discuss the convergence theories in greater detail when we talk about team communication, and that is where we will discuss this issue of symbolic needs again. But it's basically about these needs that are co-created with the coordination of meaning with each other, and the human homeostatic theory says that everything needs to be brought back to a balance. Everything needs to come back. Everything needs to be stabilized. Okay. Basis for homeostatic theory. Homeostatic theory was proposed by Katz and Kahn in 1966, discussed in Ross and Anderson. It says that organizations are open systems, which means they cannot be understood except by referring to their relations with their environments and the way in which they exchange information with other systems across system boundaries. This is what we've been talking about right from the beginning. We cannot understand communication, we cannot understand interpersonal relationships, we cannot understand the functioning of any organization unless we refer to its relationships with its environment, unless we refer to the manner in which these organizations exchange information with other systems across the system boundaries. I have one system, I communicate within the system and I communicate outside of the system. Every human being communicates with themselves and with others in their environment, and the difference in perceptions of these two sets of communication really defines who they are. The same thing applies to organizations as well. We have, this is IIT Kharagpur. Okay, let me take the example of IIT Kharagpur. We have a certain perception about ourselves when we are in the organization. We know how things work here, we know how things work in the IIT system, we know our limitations, we know our strengths. How does the rest of the world get to know that? By in and through our expression, in and through the work of our students and alumni. What we do outside of the organization helps us redefine ourselves. The feedback we get from the environment helps us redefine ourselves. We do a lot of teaching here, but this activity, me talking to you, is really the outreach activity. This is really going outside the boundaries of the system and interacting with another system, taking what I do inside the organization, outside of the organization, and of course expecting some feedback on what I do. So this is what an open system is, and this kind of an activity will really give us very good very rich feedback on our perceptions about on the perceptions of external organizations, about how we teach, about what we do in the external environment, about what people think we are. People have an opinion about us. They feel that we do a certain type of teaching here, we do a certain type of research. That research is taken outside of the boundaries when we take it to conferences, when we discuss things with our peers, we discuss things with experts, we discuss things with funding agencies. That is when they see us in a different light. They give us feedback, and that in turn determines how we think about ourselves, and that in turn determines how we start communicating internally within the organization or outside the organization. If you like what you're getting through these lectures, what will happen? You will assume, or you will tell others, or we'll receive either no feedback or positive feedback. So we come to know what we are doing is right. So the next time we do these things, the manner will be the same. Or if you don't like what we are doing, if you don't find these things useful, you will let us know. And then what we'll do is, maybe if I am not able to deliver what I have been asked to deliver through these series of lectures, there has to be something that can be improved. So what will I do? I will see what I can do best the next time I'm interacting with you, or what I can improve upon the next time I'm interacting with you, and also what I can do the next time I'm interacting with the students within the same organization, because it is a feedback about how I teach here. Similarly, for other activities, it also changes the way we do things internally. This is something I'm really going over and over again about this, because this is what really determines how we communicate with our environments. The next thing here is, organizations are purposive systems. They are created and exist to serve particular purposes, and the system functioning is constantly being compared with the central rational purpose in mind. Organizations are created with a purpose in mind. They are created to achieve a goal, and system functioning is constantly being compared with this central rational purpose in mind. Whoever is looking at what we are doing, people outside the organization, people inside the organization, are looking at us in relation to the purpose we think we are trying to achieve. So organizations come together, as we discussed right in the beginning, they come together to achieve a goal with a purpose. Organizations are systems composed of certain types of subsystems. We have production subsystems, we have parts that are exclusively responsible for production, we have parts that are responsible for support, they are constant inputs. Production deals with input, output and throughput. Support essentially deals with input, constant input in terms of resources. Maintenance subsystems, something goes wrong and you fix it. Adaptive subsystems, something goes wrong and we change ourselves. Maintenance and adaptation are two different things, slightly two parts of the same coin. Managerial subsystems, control, regulation, rewards. Organizations are ordered systems, so they are effective to the extent that a dynamic state of internal control and balance is maintained. They are again, these are the bases for homeostatic theory. We try and bring the system back to normal, back to a state of balance. That is why this whole interaction, constant feedback from the environment is important. I get feedback from you, I change the way I do things in the environment, so that the next time I send something outside the environment, the feedback, the quality of feedback is comfortable and the quantity of feedback is reduced. We notice things only when they go wrong. We do things only when, so you know, that whole thing changes and we come back to a stable system. So, and of course, all these different systems, if they are functioning well, what they will do is they will bring the organization back to status quo. Production will help us achieve our goals. Support will keep the organization going. There's constant movement, everything is balanced, everything is normal. Maintenance means something goes wrong and it is fixed and the organization is brought back to its sense of stability. Adaptive is something changes in the environment, I cannot fix what has changed in the environment, so I change myself to align my comfort zone. When I say I, now I'm referring to me as the organization. The organization aligns itself to the changes in the environment, aligns its comfort zones with the comfort zone of the environment it's in. And managerial systems, we have control that brings people back to status quo, that brings people back to normal. We have reinforcements, positive and negative, again indications that either you keep doing what you're doing or come back and do what you're expected to do. Regulation, all that. And leadership, we have to reach a certain goal, and if we are stable, we'll sort of move on our own. So all this is the basis for the homeostatic theory, which essentially, again, as I said earlier, it deals with the maintenance of balance in the organizational environment. The last theory here is the structuration theory. Structures are not static and definitive, but they are constantly in motion and contingent. Structures define what actions are appropriate, but the acts themselves as we perform them constitute the structures. What we do is what we think we should be doing, but the environment in turn informs us what we should be doing, and that in turn influences what we think we should be doing. This is what I just told you about. The feedback to these lectures will determine how I send out or how I structure further lectures for you. It will also change the way I structure the lectures in my class. The feedback I receive from within, what I think about your feedback, will in turn change the way I do things next time. So we will discuss the structuration theory and its implications in light of communication in the organization in the next class. This is what I want you to think about before at the end of this lecture. Discuss what are the differences between the classical management tradition and the structural functional tradition. What is assumed about communication in each of these traditions, and do these traditions apply to modern day organizational communication? Why or why not? Please discuss this amongst yourselves, and we will come back the next time and we will talk some more about theories of organizational communication. Thank you.